How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can, like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 150 of Talk4, the Quickfire podcast, where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Today is really no exception. This is a great one. So behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. And let me introduce Nathan Sheik Malafa, Thunderbird 1, who's going to be answering some questions today on the podcast. So Nathan, I am humbled, honored, extremely excited about this, but number one question, how you doing today? Welcome to the show, and how's the tour going?
Yeah, fantastic. Great to meet you, Louis, and appreciate you having us, having me on the podcast. Really excited to answer the questions and talk a little bit more about what we do on the Thunderbirds. It's quite an amazing team. The season is going very well. We are well into the start of the season. Currently at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas. We had a great show yesterday, despite the weather being pretty challenging, and we're keyed up. We have a beautiful blue sky today, so we're looking to hopefully send a high show as we're prepping for this morning's show. It's awesome.
Nice. I mean, yeah, as we mentioned, we had a little chat before jumping on the podcast today and got to see guys in Salinas. And, you can't describe the experience of just feeling it, seeing it for the first time. And the Thunderbirds do such an incredible job, and massive fan. So from a fan point of view, this is going to be a great show today. I'm super excited about it, but also as a keen aviator too, can't wait to dig into the details of a few things. So it's going to be good. First thing we tend to do, a little bit of an elevator pitch then. So 30 to kind of 60 seconds or maybe a couple of minutes, just a bit of an intro into the life of you then. So tell us all about it in quick form. Then we're going to dig into it on the big one. So yeah, elevator pitch us away. What is it you get to do on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So it's our official squadron name is the United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, better known as the Thunderbirds. We are a jet demonstration team. We fly the F-16 in aerial demonstrations all across the United States and Canada, and we've been overseas as well. We have 130 to 135 members on this team, and we have 3 main mission sets, and that's to recruit, to retain, and to inspire. And we really like to focus on that third piece, the inspiration, because I think if you're able to do that, then the other 2 will come along as well. For my role, I'm the commander and leader of the team, which means that as the commander, I'm responsible for the overall people and the mission as we're executing it. And then as the leader, I fly the number 1 aircraft. So it's the lead aircraft in the demonstration.
Got it. So for continuity's purposes then, just to figure out our timelines here, someone I had on recently was Astro, actually. So was he the boss before you, or was he the one before that? So how was the timeline there?
Yeah, Astro was the boss before me, Lieutenant Colonel Justin Elliott, now Colonel Justin Elliott. That's who I handed off he handed the job off to me. And then we just selected my replacement. That's Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Trueblood. He goes by Rage. So the continuity line is consistent, and it continues to progress. And it's on his absolute honor to follow in Astro's footsteps, and Brick Caldwell before him. There's been many amazing bosses. So it's really an honor for me to just be part of this team in this way.
Definitely. I mean, it's an incredible role to have and just such a powerful thing to be able to do. And I mean, you must be very humbled and honored to be able to do it. And it's an incredible line of amazing people who've had that role, and then filling those shoes must be a hell of a task to do. But let's figure out how you got here then. So we like to go into a bit of backstory. Looking at your career, you've had a great time in some pretty cool jets by the looks of it. So from the
Yeah.
F-15E to the F-35A and now the F-16 with the Thunderbird. So where did it all begin for you then? So what sparked the passion for aviation? And I guess, did you always know you wanted to be a fighter pilot? Is it a family thing? Yeah, attack a few of those points for us.
Sure. Yeah. Well, as long as I can remember, yeah, the fighter pilot, Top Gun came out in 1986, right? And I was 4 years old, so you can do the math on that. But I, saw that when I was really young. That was probably my first experience of seeing anything like fighter aviation. I grew up in Michigan, so there wasn't a lot. There's a few bases up there at that time, but not a lot of, fighter bases, right? It wasn't really exposed to that growing up. My dad took me to an air show in Muskegon, Michigan, and I actually went there to go see the Army guys. I was really into the little green Army men, that set them all up and set up the battles. So I went to go see the Army guys, the trucks and the tanks and the guns. And I remember, we're under the tent playing with the different types of weapons that they had, showing the guns and the bazookas and all that. And all of a sudden, rip roaring comes across this F-15C doing loops and rolls and making a ton of noise. And I'm just, I put the gun down and I look up to the sky and watch the performance, mesmerized by that. And we walk our way to the flight line and I see, pitch out and land the aircraft and taxi back. And that was all really cool. But what really got me interested was when that canopy opened and somebody got out of there. That's what made that connection that this is something that is possible. Somebody had to do that. Somebody was in there controlling that amazing machine. And that, I think, was the very first time I had the spark of, hey, maybe this is something that I could possibly do. And since then, it's a journey. It's actually was something that seemed very much out of reach. Like, that's for really smart people. That's for other folks. I'll never be able to do something. It might as well have been an astronaut. But just through hard work, a lot of studying, getting good grades, playing sports, developing leadership qualities, I was able to get to that point. And it's worth mentioning that there's a lot of things outside of my control that had to go my way. So luck, timing, and opportunity all kind of came together to give me those amazing opportunities. I'm really blessed to be able to have done that.
Brilliant. So walk us through that career a bit then. So what were the first things you got to fly? What squadrons did you go to? And if
Mhm.
you'd like to, maybe tie in a bit into there about, was it a smooth journey? What were some of the bits that were more tricky or difficult? Any mentors along the way who helped you out navigate through that? Yeah, just some of those experiences too. I think it really lays a great groundwork for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I didn't have a huge, no, there weren't a lot of people in my family that had served in the military for long term, a few stints, 4 years here and there, but I didn't know really what I was getting myself into joining the military. So I applied for a ROTC scholarship, Reserve Officer Training Corps. It's one of three avenues that you can commission because you have to be a commissioned officer to be a fighter pilot. So I went to Purdue University there, did the ROTC program on a scholarship. It's very helpful to help pay for school and taking additional military classes. That's how I got involved, more involved in the military, and that's what brought me in. Flying fighters was what brought me in as a goal, but really what made me stay was all the people you mentioned. The mentors and just tons of them to name. Some of two of them are fighter pilots today. Justin Mock and Dale Weller were mentors of mine that really inspired me to do the things that I needed to do to be competitive for getting a pilot spot out of ROTC. I was able to do that. Went to a program called Euro NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training, or NJEPT for short, and that's out of Wichita Falls, Texas, at Shepherd Air Force Base. And that's a unique pilot training experience for Air Force pilots because they bring in a lot of the other NATO countries. Will send their top instructor pilots and students to go there. So it's a very international mix of training environment. So I'd have a Portuguese instructor pilot, was one of my first instructor pilots, and that was a lot of fun learning how to fly. Just earning my wings through all those different experiences. It was there actually my very first. My personal instructor in the T-37. So I'm old enough to have flown the T-37. I don't know if you heard about that, but they retired that a few years ago. um, Drago Taylor, Drago's his call sign. He was an F-15E pilot, and I remember seeing his patch. It had a panther on it, Red Panther, and it looked awesome and gnarly. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. What squadron's that? So that's the 494th Panthers out at Lake and Heath, because those instructors would wear patches from their old squadron. So that was my initial, you know, interest because of the type of pilot he was and just the type of instruction that he gave got me thinking about, okay, what kind of jet, if I could list, because you end up eventually listing what jets you want to fly. Obviously, the Air Force tells you what you're going to go fly, but they offer you, you get a vote, as they say. So, yeah, he inspired me to put down Strike Eagles based on the mission set. So that was a really important piece too. Was, hey, how do you choose what plane you want to put on your wish list? And the advice was, you want to pick mission set. A lot of people will think, location because of where the bases are at, or certain people that that you think are cool, like that's another thing. But really, it's the mission set that should drive your desires for what you want to fly, because planes change bases get moved around. That person that you like might not be representative of that entire community. So the mission set that the Strike Eagle did, the F-15E, which was my first aircraft that you mentioned, does both air-to-air and air-to-ground. And I thought that was really cool, a really cool opportunity. And you get to fly with a WISO, or a weapons systems officer, in the backseat. So that's that two-seat airplane. And I don't know, maybe it was when I was younger watching the Top Gun movies, just thinking of having a goose and a Maverick, right? Like I thought that was kind of cool. And that was one reason, or potentially one reason why I gravitated towards the F-15E.
Nice. So what did that wish list look like for you then? So I imagine you had second, third, fourth
Mhm.
choices after the
Yeah.
dream, which would have been the F-15, I imagine, from that childhood experience. So yeah, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, I did put Strike Eagles as number one. So F-15Es was number one. I was very fortunate to get that as my option. My other options were the A-10 was actually number two, because at that time, right, this was post 9/11. We're in Afghanistan and Iraq, and doing a lot of work with ground troops. So supporting the men and women on the ground was a something that was near and dear to my heart, keeping them safe in any way I could. So A-10 was up there. And then I believe F-22 was still fairly new, but they had just started dropping those. Actually, they hadn't started dropping those yet. So I couldn't select F-22, but F-16 and then F-15C. So that was kind of the list in which I selected my request for what I wanted to fly.
Nice. So former boss, career path to being Thunderbird 1.
Hmm.
Astronaut finalist drops out to take Thunderbird 1 role. It's pretty difficult to top, but what was your kind of progression like then to get into Thunderbird
Hmm.
1? Were you a Thunderbird before Thunderbird 1? I'm not entirely sure about that part. And yeah,
Yeah,
just
that's a good
how did it
question.
all happen?
Right. No, that's a great question. A lot of people assume that they assume that number one was usually a former Thunderbird, and you kind of work your way up like you would in any other organization, where you kind of work your way up to the lead position. Not the case for this position. This is a position that you have to try out for. It is a second squadron command. So I was a squadron commander prior to this. And even being on this team and being a Thunderbird was never something that was even in the realm that I thought was in the realm of possible because of my background. Right, I spent over 10 years flying Strike Eagles, so that was what I had just assumed that was what I was going to fly for the rest of my career. There was an opportunity for me to transition to the F-35 after I went to weapons school. So I did the weapons school program, which is a 6 month, really intense course. If you think, Top Gun, Navy, top instructors kind of thing, that's the Air Force equivalent. Top Gun is a 6 to 9 week program. Weapons school is a 6 month program, so it's a pretty intense training with all the top instructors from all the different weapon systems in the Air Force. And really, yeah, you learn how to become an expert in that weapon system, but you learn really more about integration and begin to develop those relationships with people that are going to be able to help you out downrange. That's the magic. If you're talking about how do we win wars, how are we going to win the next war? Yes, capabilities are very important, but those relationships and the ability to integrate not just within the Air Force, not just within the joint community, but with our international partners as well. That is the secret sauce, in my opinion. So after weapons school, I went and did a deployment in the F-15E, and then that was when the opportunity presents itself. Hey, we'd like people from all different backgrounds to go to operational tests, where you get to test new software, new weapons, and develop tactics. And the F-35 was brand new, and they wanted someone from the Strike Eagle community to go be part of that test team. So I was fortunate to have the opportunity to go do that. And that's in a squadron we call it the 422, or the 422nd Operational Test and Evaluation Squadron. So I went to learn to fly the F-35, went to operational test. And then it was there I reunited with Astro. Astro and I go way back, by the way. We were lieutenants together in the 335th Chiefs. It's the fighter squadron at Seymour Johnson. Wampum for any Chiefs that end up watching this. It's our little saying. Yeah, as lieutenants, we were running amok, having a good time, and learning how to kill and survive in the F-15E. So yeah, we go way back. It was really fun to work with him again in the operational test capacity because we rejoined in operational tests as he was coming through because he went to test pilot school as well, and then onto the Thunderbirds. So that was when I really started to think about that as a potential next option to keep flying. I love flying fighters. I love leading, and it was a really cool opportunity to do a unique mission set that we normally don't get to do.
Definitely. So let's dig into it then. So you're the commander and leader of the Thunderbirds. You don't just
Mhm.
fly the number one jet. You also lead, like you said, a 130-person team that represents the best of the US Air Force. So give us an inside look into it then. So what does it take to run an elite demonstration squadron like this? I mean, have you ever done anything before that even feels remotely like what this job is like? Yeah, run me through the day-to-days of it.
Yeah, yes and no. So the way I describe it to a lot of folks is my last squadron command was more of a typical squadron command, where if I had to divvy out my responsibilities and roles, I was 80% commander, doing commander type things. So briefing senior leadership, advocating for the people, installing policies to progress the mission. And I would do that about 80% of the time, and then 20% was flying, right? I would fill a line or lead a mission once to maybe twice a week, just based on all of the other requirements that were levied upon the command position. In this job, it's flipped. 80% of my life is flying and leading, and it has to be that way because the demonstration that you saw at Salinas, it is that hard. A lot of people don't realize that, oh, those jets are flying really close. That's cool. You got all this AI and all kinds of fake stuff on the internet that like, oh, maybe they have computers that are helping them fly that close. No, it is literally stick and rudder skills, and it is just brute force and hours and hours and hours of training. Just like any elite professional sports team, right? You got to put in the time and you got to do it in a way that gets everybody progressing along in the same progression to keep it safe and effective, right? So that takes building block approach. So you start out pretty far away, and as you gain proficiency, you're able to move into different formations. On this team, we have a few different formation positions. So our furthest formation that when we start training, we call that spread or training spread, which is about where you would fly in the closest formation in the combat air force. So in a normal fighter squadron, our furthest away spot is actually the closest spot. That's where we start. And then we'll move it in from spread into a formation position called Sprymond. It's called Sprymond because the next formation position inside of that is called Diamond. So Sprymond is in between Diamond and spread. Yeah, we're really creative on this team. And then you go from Sprymond into Diamond. Okay, so Diamond is a lot of people will get that confused because we do call the Diamond is the four jets that fly in the Diamond formation, but that is also a formation position that we fly. And that is our signature position, right? That's the one that you'll see us in air shows, and looks like we're flying really close. We do have two more formation positions inside of that, though, and not every team gets to those positions. The other one is called stripes align, and that's where forgive my use of hands, but I'm a fighter pilot, so I'm going to use my hands here. If my thumbs are the wingtips, that's where you actually have wingtip overlap, and
Yeah.
there's stripes on our wings, and those look like they're aligned. So that's the first formation position where you actually have overlap of the aircraft for just that really tight signature look. And you probably saw that at Salinas. We were flying in stripes aligned. The diamond formation was flying in stripes aligned there. And then last year was the first year that we progressed to the closest formation that I think has ever been flown on the team that at least I know about, and we call close it up. And that's where that wingtip isn't just a conflict for the other flight members' wingtip. It's a conflict for the stab, the horizontal stab in the back of the aircraft. So that requires obviously a ton of practice. And in order to move into those positions, we have to be 100% confident that we're not going to scrape paint.
Yeah.
So sorry, I kind of went on a different path there, but I think it's something interesting. Not a lot of people realize that's how we start and begin our training season, what we would call far away, and slowly eke our ways in. And there's many times the teams don't get to some of those positions. They maybe only make it to diamond, and that's okay. It's okay because it still has that same impact on the crowd. But one thing that's unique about this team is we're always trying to improve, right? Like every elite team doesn't just say, okay, that's good enough, right? They're always striving for perfection. That's our bar. And I think I like the old Vince Lombardi quote, or at least I think it's attributed to him, right? We're going to aim for perfection because along the way we'll catch excellence. And that's what this team's all about, is always pushing the rope, trying to get better, trying to improve, and just continue to grow.
Definitely. Outside of the jets and outside of the training environment, what other stuff kind of really contributes to that? So really gelling the team together, because I imagine it's a difficult thing to do when you've got such big shoes to fill and such a difficult mission set to accomplish in these formations. They're incredibly difficult things, and then you get new pilots coming in, and every person ever is their own toolbox of strengths and weaknesses and stuff. So what kind of stuff are you guys doing outside of just the jets and training that's pretty obvious things to bring that team together and then eventually make it so perfect that it's you'd never know which pilot was which almost?
Absolutely. And that was the other thing I wanted to mention about how do you manage a team like this? Like I don't. Yes, I'm the commander, and I am responsible for the execution of the mission and the people, but I'm only able to do that because I have an amazing team around me. And I think that's true for many incredible teams as well. I have 11 other officers, right? So yes, you have the pilots 1 through 6 that fly the demonstration, but really the majority of the work is in Thunderbird 7 through Thunderbird 12. We call that part of the team the glue, because they're the ones that actually hold the team together. So I'll just run through what they what their responsibilities are. So 7 is a pilot. He's the director of operations, so he manages really what a lot of other commanders would get involved with that I don't. Is the day-to-day schedule. He runs the show center team, so that's our safety team that we call it. Judy is our communications trailer, so making sure that we have full communications. He's managing the temporary flight restriction, the 5 nautical mile radius circle that we fly in that's sanitized. Sometimes other pilots don't read those, and they'll go trundling into our TFR, and he has to either deconflict them. We just a few times this year, he's had to tell us to maneuver a certain different direction, or even terminate a mission for momentarily, because we have life flights coming in, right? We fly in major cities, and in major cities you have hospitals, and there's still people that need to get to and from hospitals via helicopters for emergency things. So we pause our air show and we get the helicopter in safely, get him down landed, and then he turns the show back on. So those are just a few examples of the things that he does real time, as well as helping manage the rest of the glue. So number 8 is our advanced pilot and narrator. Also a pilot, doesn't fly in the demonstration, but he and his crew chief will take a jet out the day before. We typically leave on a Thursday. Like, I will lead the team on a Thursday to go to our show site. He'll go on Wednesday and get everything set up from the rental cars, so that when we show up, all the cars are lined up. They're on the tarmac. We get our brief and we hop in the cars, and we're able to go set up at the ops building and get our stuff squared away. He also as the narrator. He narrates the show, so we have with the music and narration, and it's just as precise as the flying. We're talking to the second, and he's saying the end of the last word, and we're executing the maneuver. So that takes a lot of practice and a lot of time to learn that as well.
Yeah.
Number 9 is our flight surgeon. So he has a huge job of keeping us flying, because there are no backup pilots. If one of us gets sick and sick enough to the point where we can't fly, we fly sick. Ensuring that it's safe. If we have the sniffles or something, he'll make sure that we can get up. But if we are too sick to fly, he's making sure that we're taking care of him back up in the air as soon as possible. Number 10, the executive officer. She runs the command support staff. So all the things that I would normally take part in, from in processing, out processing, admin for awards and decorations and performance reports, right? Her team manages that entire portfolio, and a lot of other things that I just can't get to, emails and all the admin scheduling, right? You can imagine that that's a pretty busy job. Number 11 is the maintenance officer. She runs 100 maintainers from all types of different career fields to make sure that we have the jets required. We take 8 jets on the road with us everywhere we go. We're in 2 major cities every week, and they break, right? So there's a lot of folks that go on the road to go get parts. We have 2 shifts: the day shift that helps launch and recover the aircraft, and we have the swing shift that comes in at night, and we're getting ready for bed, and they're out there still working, turning wrenches to make sure that those jets are ready to go. And then you got number 12. You met Nemo. She's a public affairs officer. So from setting this up to our social media to managing everything that outward that we do, all our community engagements, that's a ton of work as well. Posting the pictures and videos and working on the documentary that we have coming out on May 23rd on Netflix. You'll see a lot of the fruits of their labor in that documentary as well. So really long answer, but it was important to highlight that the other officers are really the only way that we run this team effectively. It's not really me, and the teams that they run are all hand-picked professionals from their career fields that do an outstanding job. So when you actually have an all-star team, it makes my job very easy because I can focus on the flying.
Definitely. And, the Thunderbirds are a 130 person team. And you've obviously mentioned quite a few of them there. But one of the kind of parallels I've obviously drawn with a few of the leaders and commanders and commanding officers I've spoken to recently is that there's like an underlying, not a frustration, but just kind of like a want or like a need that they wish that the people in the maintenance and these people behind the scenes doing such hard work, they got a little bit more of a spotlight sometimes. So, out of
Mm-hmm.
that other, I don't know, 100 plus people there, what comprises of the other, load of the Thunderbirds too? Is it people at Nellis just on standby? Is it people just turning bolts and stuff and maintaining these jets constantly? Is it the paintwork? What goes into the rest of the team then?
Yeah, a ton. So when we go on the road, we take 70 people with us. That's obviously the pilots and our officers. The rest of those are maintainers, public affairs team, and other support teams that I'll give you a few examples. When we do a show, we have somebody record. They have to record the show so that when we go to debrief, we can watch and see what was the audience view of that maneuver. Because we may think it looked great in the cockpit. I mean, all I'm looking at is my HUD, and I'm looking outside of the ground reference. I'm not, looking at my wingman. They're flying off of me. But it's very difficult for me to see how did the crowd perceive that. So if we need to make any adjustments, that's somebody's job is filming. And you might think, okay, that's easy to film a show. It's not as easy as you think, right? They have to know where the jets are coming from which direction. Should they be zoomed in or zoomed out? When we leave, what do we care about from the optics perspective about seeing where's the next jet coming from, right? So they have a whole routine that they have to memorize as well, because we also have 3 different show types that we could potentially have to fly based on the weather, right? So that in and of itself, that's one small example of a very important job because it helps us improve our show day in and day out. And that's an additional duty for someone. A lot of those, one of the people that does that, their primary role is our resource advisor. So the money, right? You got to be able to fund everyone that goes on these temporary duty locations. It costs money to do that. Everyone has to file their travel vouchers. They need to get paid. We actually have to pay for our own airlift, right? So organizing that, managing the budget, that's a whole nother job as well. So those are just a couple examples that keep this team running, seemingly in the background, but you're absolutely right. I think the pilots get a lot of attention because that is what is forefront. But what I continue to tell the team is, yeah, the demo is very important. It's important that it's excellent, that it's inspiring, and that it moves people to talk to members on this team or talk to somebody that they know in service, because it should be a conversation starter. Right. I don't necessarily believe that somebody watches the demonstration and runs right to their recruiter and goes, I want to join the Air Force because I saw the Thunderbirds. What I believe happens is they see something that's amazing and outstanding and incredible, and they go, wow, that's something really cool. And then they meet somebody on the team or they meet somebody in service, and it begins that conversation in a relationship, because it's very important that folks that we're trying to recruit see themselves doing these jobs. They see that, okay, yeah, oh, they're from the same hometown I am, or they have a very similar background to me. And maybe that's something that I could do in the future. Just harkening back to what I talked about as a little kid, right? I saw somebody hop out of the cockpit of the F-15C, and it just had that connection. Like maybe that's something I could do. So to me, that's really important that everyone understands that the demo is important, but it's really the relationships that they make. And that really guides the type of people that we want to select on this team, people that want to go out and engage with the public and share their passion for their job and what they do and how they contribute to the mission.
I really like it. That's a great answer for sure. So much to be taken away from there. And I think it's clear as well that when performance is a great metric to measure how well the team's doing and stuff. And like you said, tightest potentially ever. I think that is a reflection, obviously, on the leader too. So you may have the A-star team, but there's obviously a great apple at the top of that tree who's, inspiring the right things and keeping things in line. So, kind of leads me to my next question then. So
Mhm.
I got to draw a few parallels here, and I think there's so much to be taken away from fighter pilots. And this podcast, it's not limited to the military. I've been very focused on the military and fighter pilots and stuff, because of passion, but also because I've genuinely found that the level of professionalism and skill displayed by pilots and fighter pilots and people like yourself is just a class above anything I've found before. So those leadership lessons are really important. But looking at that career, 3,500 fighter hours, 844 combat hours, I got to learn and ask you really what some of those lessons are that you learned really in combat that you feel like have kind of shaped your leadership
Mhm.
profile that you're displaying here today. So what are some of those big principles, some of those in cockpit things that you've learned that you're kind of trying to copy and paste a bit really towards the team and your leadership profile? Yeah, just a few pointers there really for building strong leaders and how you do it.
That, yeah, that's a great question, Louis. Yeah, so taking lessons from combat, when you initially start out flying fighters as a young wingman, you're hanging on for dear life, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you're just trying to absorb as much instruction that you can and apply it and pass the ride, right? And move on to the next ride. I just want to pass, I want to get through it. And it takes time and experience and a lot of things that I brought from learning the experience. And I guess to make it a short answer, it's balance. There is a science to this. There's a science to flying. There's a science to flying fighters, and all that is codified and written in our operations manuals and in our tactics manuals. And you can have all the book smarts in the world, and you can memorize we call it the 3-1, right? That's our tactics, how to employ these weapons to kill and survive. Um, you can have that memorized and maybe not still be the best pilot that you can be because there is an art form to this as well. And that is really based in decision making, knowing when to either push a limit, take risk. When you really break it down, it's about risk analysis. If I'll give you an example. When I was in Afghanistan, there was a village. We were flying a night mission. I was the flight lead. I was flying the F-15E at the time. I had my Wizzo with me, obviously, and then my wingman and his Wizzo. We were out as a two-ship, and we were flying around the mountains, the Hindu Kush Mountains. And these are, if you're not familiar, massive, massive mountains. And there was a town. I'll leave the name of the town out there, out of this. But essentially, if you can imagine this valley. Sorry, look at my hands. There we go. So like this valley is like a V, and the town is at the bottom of this valley. And there was some friendly troops that were taking ground fire. They were holed up in a school, and they were taking pot shots from the sides of the valley. The Taliban had them zoned in, and they were taking shots at them. Well, this night was extremely dark. It was what we call a low illumination night. So even with NVGs on, or night vision goggles, those would do a pretty good job. Even with a little bit of ambient light, you could see the terrain in the mountains. It doesn't do great with depth perception, but at least it'll allow you to avoid a lot of those mountains. But this was a low illumination, so even with NVGs, it was pitch black. Well, they were asking for a show of force. And for a show of force, that is where we drop down low. We do a loud pass with afterburner, maybe dropping flares to scare the enemy away. And 9 times out of 10, that usually broke contact, and friendlies were able to disengage with the enemy. Well, this night, because of these mountains being so high, we couldn't see the valley. We couldn't actually see the mountains. So we used a technology called terrain following radar that's on the Strike Eagle. And in order to activate it, you need to be a certain airspeed. So in order to get that airspeed, it's calibrated airspeed. So we had to climb up to over 30,000 feet, light full afterburner, bunt to continue to accelerate to 8 to 10 units of angle of attack, so that by the time we hit our minimum safe altitude, again, I couldn't see the mountains, so we just had to use altitudes. to ensure we're safe, that the terrain following radar turns on, and that will offer protection. If it will predict that, hey, if your jet is going to fly into a mountain, it will fly you up, so it'll keep you safe. So we get that turns on, and I take my jet with my Wizzo, and we descend down into this valley, and I just remember pitch black turning even into more pitch black. Like it was like you just couldn't see anything outside, even on MVGs. So I look inside the cockpit, and I'm looking at my tactical situational display, which is essentially a moving map. So it had a graphic of my airplane, and I'm flying my aircraft based on that, which is not always the most accurate way to do it. And the navigation that was in my HUD. We fly low. We pass through the valley where they were taking fire, and I'm getting ready to climb out, and I realize I don't have enough. I don't have enough protection. I don't have enough space. These mountains are so big and this valley is so deep that I can't just climb out because I didn't have enough room to do that. So I actually had to follow the valley far enough where I had enough distance in front of me that I could light the afterburners and climb straight out. Because a Strike Eagle, even though it's got a lot of power with those motors, when you're fully laden, combat loaded, full of fuel, it still takes a bit to get out of there. So it's a long story to talk about, like, the risk decision. Like, is that worth it? Did I put myself in too much risk? And looking back, probably there may have been other ways that we could have done that. Maybe a higher altitude, making noise, or dropping flares. We were able to break contact, but that's the type of thing I'm talking about when you're deciding. When you talk about, hey, how do you take these lessons and apply them later? It's the balance, and you got to have that experience to be able to see, hey, balance the art with the science to see what my risk tolerance is, and continually applying that. That applies on this team. I mean, even yesterday we flew the air show. I told you weather was challenging, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had to make some decisions the day before to go, okay, we're supposed to take off at 3:30. There's supposed to be thunderstorms, heavy rain, and hail. Okay, let's move this back. Well, we looked at the forecast. All right, let's move our takeoff time 3 hours earlier. So that's what we did. That obviously takes a ton of coordination with all the other agencies, the Air Boss. We have lots of other acts that are doing that. And then as we flew, the storm was starting to gather and the clouds were coming in. So I had to make a decision there of, do we continue the demonstration? And because I have amazing pilots, one of my pilots said, "Hey, boss, I recommend we nix the last two maneuvers and try to get the jets on the ground." So that's what we did. We cut out a couple maneuvers, so we had to modify it real time. And it was still an amazing show. The people had a fantastic time, and we landed the jets just as the bad weather was coming in. And that's that balance between the art and the science that helps. And I think the key there is also to have other people that have that experience that can feed you good information, and then knowing when to push the boundaries and when to accept that level of risk. That's critical. So if I had to, like, sum it down to a key, it's a balance of the art and science and risk decision making.
Definitely, yeah, and yeah, something I've seen obviously this year. I think maybe the media highlights these things because they're kind of a quick story, really, aren't they? But just a lot of aviation accidents this year so far, and yeah, I know
Yeah.
the French team had an accident as well recently, and just a whole lot of stuff going on. And I guess one of the main things as well for you guys must just be having such a strict criteria for go, no go kind of a thing, and then being really
Hmm.
tight on those rules and having an SOP basically for, if this happens then we don't go, this happens and we do go. And I think that's really applicable into business as well, right? Even if that's investment or whether that's
Hmm.
a business plan or something like that, just having a really, really clear strategy and plan and contingency planning as well. Really important. Is that something that's massive for you guys? What does that kind of look like when you have a bad day at the office and the weather rolls in? How do you sort of go through that process and weigh it up on the kind of like personal level? So if people can
Hmm.
kind of strip a few things away from that process, yeah, how do you guys kind of go about it and make that decision at the end of it?
Great question. For us, it starts with the regulations, and that's what you're talking about. That's already a pre-plan based on experience, based on, when we talk about our training rules in our briefs in the combat Air Force, we say they're written in blood. because people have lost their lives, and it may have not been a perceived threat at the time. But that's how we come up with the rule set that guides what we do, and those are standards, right? You mentioned SOPs, standards or regulations. A good example on this team is our weather criteria. So in order for us to do a high show, we need at least 6,500 feet ceilings and 5 nautical miles of visibility. That allows us to do loops, so over the top maneuvers. If the clouds are lower than that, but they're above 3,500 feet, we can do a low show. And that allows us, doesn't allow us to do the loops, but allows us to do the rolls, right? You obviously need less altitude to do the rolls. And if it's below that, down to 2,000 feet, that's where we can do a flat show. And then in our regulations, the commander leader is given the authority to waiver it down to 1,500 feet and 5 nautical miles. You always need the 5 nautical miles of visibility for this team because that's the edges of our TFR. And that's the furthest point away that our solos will get away from each other. And they need to be able to see each other at all times because they're the ones that go down the show line, point at each other. And it looks like they dodge each other at the last second to avoid a collision, which is part of that excitement. So right there, we already have a baseline. Those are the rules. It's black and white. And that guides our action. So if yesterday the ceilings were at 1,400 feet and I couldn't wave it down, then we're not flying, right? Because that's the rule, and those rules are in place for safety. There's another good example of that too is in some locations, a high show, 6,500 feet. This is a good example here because the density altitude is a little bit higher. So I actually had to take our practice tape and video when I was going through. I'm like, actually, at this location, I need about 7,500 feet AGL to complete a loop to have a 500-foot buffer between us and the cloud. So I said, yeah, even if it's at 65, I'm still going to call a low show because I know if I go uphill based on the practices that we did, it's too close to call there. So we make those calls real time. So it takes a little bit of work and modifying it. Again, that's the science piece is like, it's written. That's what it is, black and white. And then there's the art piece of like, well, yeah, just because it's written that way, we always have to err on the side of safety of doing that. And then real time, right? You may have a best plan in place and it falls apart as soon as you get punched in the face, right? You mentioned the contingency planning. So you can plan to contingencies until you're blue in the face. So what we do is we pick the most likely or the highest risk things that could happen. So at some locations, that's the cable. We need a cable in case we have certain emergency procedures that require us to land with a cable. So sometimes that's the highlight. So we'll talk through that decision tree of, okay, well, the next cable is really far away. So if someone has an issue, we're going to try and land everybody else, or we'll immediately divert everybody while the person with the emergency will land and take that cable as an example. Yesterday, it was the weather. So we spent more time talking about the weather and how we're going to go about the decision making. So as far as a piece of advice, you start with the SOPs, this is what's laid out, and then you talk about, hey, what's the most likely threat today and how we're going to mitigate that so you can, so you're not talking for days about, all the different things that could possibly happen. But eventually in execution, those things do happen. And that's where experience and trusting your team to give you the accurate information to make a decision is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing is that I know from tennis and sport and stuff too, that anything where it involves a high level of precision, conditions being the same in a testing environment, especially day in, day out, really helps with that. But then when things keep getting thrown in the mix, different conditions, times of day, wind, things like that, that's when it makes testing and performance and accuracy pretty challenging. So, on that next question, I was going to ask you, what do you think are some of the most challenging aspects of the job? So, being boss, is it actually this here where you've kind of got a very, very precise, accurate display that you need to do, but you got constant condition changes that you need to adapt to all the time? Is that the most challenging part, or are there other things that are involved in there too, which you find, are really difficult and make it, keep you on your toes all the time?
For me, I think it depends on where you're at in your commander leader tour and your boss tour. So initially, all your focus is on the flying because you are replacing somebody that had just completed 2 years. They are the best, essentially the best flight lead in the Air Force at that time, because they've been doing it for 2 years. So, and you're coming in new. So that's really the main challenge is just learning the demonstration, memorizing the comms. So spending the time to try to mimic that former boss as much as possible while you learn the feel of the jet, the feel of the demo. And yeah, along with that comes that decision making for the contingencies, adjusting to the different variables that are thrown at you at the various places. I will say that one thing that helps you adjust to the variables is having a strong foundation in the basics. And that's what we focus on, just like a sports team, right? Fundamentals, right? I've heard coaches all the time, fundamentals, 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 because when those other variables get thrown in there, if you have a solid foundation, you're going to be able to handle a lot more variables and contingencies that get thrown your way, because you won't have to spend the extra brain bites, thinking about the basics. So I'll just say that, the fundamentals are key, and that's where you spend the majority of your time. That's the most difficult thing about this job initially. And then additionally, a way that you have for this job to help you along with that is number two, Thunderbird 2. He or she is in his second year when you have a new boss, and that is their time to be the boss instructor pilot. So right now we have a new number 2. That's Shadow Burris, Major Josh Burris. And once we get about halfway to 3/4 of the way through the year, I'm going to start training him up on things that he needs to know about the boss job, specifically the flying. So being able to fly the lines, being able to um, do the comm correctly, and really fly correctly, so that he understands what the fundamentals and the basics, so that when I'm gone, because I don't, as an old boss, I do my couple month handoff. I'll do my handoff with Rage, and then I'm going to go, I'm going to be gone, and I won't be part of the team anymore. So that's where we have some accountability help with Thunderbird 2, helping the new boss learn that. In a second year boss, like in my position, yeah, I think probably the hardest thing is the flying is still always very difficult, but it's really more the management aspect of, okay, how do I set the team up for future success? How do I create a culture and environment that's inviting for our top folks to want to be a part of this team? So more of the culture and setting the conditions so that you can get the best people to want to apply to be on the Thunderbirds.
Definitely. Sounds like there must be a bit of bittersweet there, right? I mean, it's an incredible thing that you're doing, and passing on the mantelpiece is an incredible job, and it's been done for many, many years now and stuff. But from a personal standpoint, must be a tough one to let go, right? I mean, you got the best job ever, the F-16, the bubble canopy, and a whole lot of great people around you. What does it feel like to be you, passing this on?
Yeah, bittersweet's the perfect way to describe it. This is a job you pour everything you have in. And oh, by the way, it's not just me. My wife is along for this ride too, and I would say that that's another very challenging part for everybody on the team that has family. Just being away, being gone that much. We're on the road 9 months out of the year. Actually, more than that when you start counting winter training. It's probably more like the 9 months is just the show season, and then we do about two more months of winter training off site. So we're on the road a ton. You can mitigate it by having the family come out on some of the trips with you, which is fantastic, and that's always great when they do that. But it's definitely challenging on the home front. It's challenging too because the family, they see the Instagram and they see posts on Facebook like, oh, my spouse is just out having a great time, and um, it can cause some challenges back at home where they're dealing with real life, right? The dishwasher breaks, the car doesn't work, the all the things that you should be around to help out with are solely their burden, which is very challenging. So that's another thing, another good thing to highlight, that this is a sacrifice not just for the members but for the families as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's we got a few minutes left here, so I think now's a great time to talk about the youngsters then. So people coming into it, and I think there's a great few lessons here from young you really to pass forward
Mhm.
from that experience that you had coming into all this. So aspiring aviators, whether they want to fly fighters or just get into aviation generally, because that's what the Thunderbirds is all about. I think it's not just about military recruitment; it is about getting people into the
Mhm.
life and the world of aviation generally too. So what are your best bits of advice really for staying the course and achieving the dream? I imagine you had a few moments probably along your way where there was bits of doubt and things where you maybe a bit of imposter syndrome at times, especially doing a job like this. It must be, a whole lot to take on. So,
Mhm.
young you, onto the next generation, really, what's your best advice for getting into all this?
Yeah, it's a great point, and you mentioned imposter syndrome. I have that entirely. I've had that my whole career. It gets easier the further along you go, and the more confidence that you can build in your abilities to complete the mission and do a good job. I would say, number one, if this is something that you're interested in, you do your research, right? So there's tons of information online. Get in contact with someone that's doing the thing that you want to do, which is really mentorship. So try and find a mentor. Ways that you can do that, right? Going to these air shows or reaching out online. Our contact information is online, or a family friend, friend of a friend, right? Find somebody that can help guide you in your journey to accomplishing your dreams. There's many steps, there's many hoops along the way. What deters a lot of people is just the amount of work, right? And anything that's worth doing and any major dream to make it come true. I mean, I'm sure like running a podcast, right? Like that's a big thing. And once you start getting into it, you're like, okay, I got to buy the equipment. Like I have to get people, right? I have to figure out these questions. I have to figure out like that's a lot of work to do. So the preparation is critical if you want to be successful at it. Um, so yeah, preparation and research is the number one thing I would recommend to do. Finding a mentor would be the next step. And then I like planning things, and I like having goals and checking. I'm a box checker, right? Like I like, say I'm going to do something. I mean, even if I went grocery shopping and I already picked it up, I'll still write it on the grocery list just so I can check the box, right? That's just my personality, but I would like to do something like that. So have a list of goals, something that's manageable, right? The SMART acronym for goals, something that you can see the progress, because in a business like this, especially let's just say becoming a fighter pilot, it's a long road, right? You have to go to college, you have to get your bachelor's degree. That's step one. That's 4 years. It's a long time. And then you have to compete for a pilot spot. You have to find a commissioning source, go to pilot training, go to all the other additional training that you need for like survival training and introduction of fighter fundamentals. And then eventually make it to your weapon system, train in that. So you're talking a good out of high school, call it 6, 7 years that you're just training to even get to the point where now you're a wingman in a fighter squadron. Patience is key. You got to, if patience and persistence are absolutely key if you want to see that goal through. But I think starting is usually the hardest part. So do the research and see if that's something that you really are passionate about or something that you really want to do, and take the baby steps towards it. The other thing I'd advise for folks that are specifically interested in flying would be to go get a discovery flight. A lot of people see the videos, they see the movies, like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. Well, go to your local FBO, go to your local airport, find a flight school, find an instructor that'll take you on a discovery flight. Flying is not cheap, so that's another big, I'd call that a barrier for folks that want to do it. But there are scholarship programs out there. Cajun's Aviation Dreams is one that I recommend to a lot of people. He was a former Thunderbird. He unfortunately passed away in 2018 in a training accident. He was Thunderbird 4, and his family created a sponsor or a scholarship in his name. So Cajun's Aviation Dreams offers that opportunity for folks that are interested in flight. So I recommend doing that and seeing if that's something you're passionate about, because my mom got me a discovery flight when I was a kid in high school, when I was like, yeah, I think this is something I might want to do. So she gets me the flight and goes, okay, hopefully this will get it out of his system and he'll go, be a banker or something. But I came back grinning ear to ear, and she goes, "Oh man, I created a monster. Here we go." So, but that's what kind of helped me along my journey and got me interested in aviation. So those are some practical things that you can do if you're interested in pursuing a career in aviation.
I like it. If I was a youngster thinking about doing all this and wanting to pursue this, I think one of the things I'd worry about the most might actually just be if I've got this massive passion to go fly fighters and and I get in to go and do that. and I just quite simply it's just too competitive, or I just can't quite make the
Hmm.
cut. I think that's one of the things that would worry me the most, almost in a kind of like a weird way. So just wondering, do you feel like, yeah, nowadays with how competitive it is, and having a career like yours and stuff, do you feel like the planets do need to kind of align to some degree for that to happen nowadays? Or do you feel like someone who does put in, 6, 7, 8 years of 110%, do you reckon it's possible for anyone?
Um, I think so. I think there are some things that I mentioned earlier, like opportunity, right? Luck and timing. So luck's a big part of that, and some of that is like the medical conditions, right? So there's some medical conditions that are hard stops, unfortunately. So I know a lot of people that were very passionate about trying to fly, and they had a medical condition that disqualified them from doing that. I will also say that there are a lot of people that have been disqualified for medical conditions that got a waiver. And they sought waivers, and they worked extremely hard to go get waivers because that's what they're passionate about. So I do believe that, I would call it 99%, if you can dream it, you can do it. No one says it's going to be easy by any means. It might be the most difficult thing that you ever done, but if you're truly passionate about it, that might be the test that's put in front of you to see what you're willing to do to reach those dreams. Um, yeah, so I think it is possible for the vast majority of people. And yeah, I encourage you just to take those steps and be persistent about it.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, you know what? Funnily enough, Astro is a great example. His eyesight was the issue, and that was his hard stop. And then the
Yeah.
legislations changed, and then the rules were different. Then he went and got the surgery, and then hey presto, there you go. There's that career. So, pretty close to home as well for you. There's an example of how that can
Hmm.
happen. Exactly right there. So, and then the last
Yep.
one, then on a personal front. So, I know we're kind of speaking to the youngsters here, but what about young you? If you had a minute to go back,
Mm.
have a little whisper in the ear of the young you around that kind of 12, 13 year mark. What would you say for this crazy journey going forward? Just a little bit of advice there in that back to the future moment.
Yeah, I'd tell young me, yeah, don't worry so much. With that, going back to that imposter syndrome, and I had that exact feeling that you just mentioned that, man, this is super competitive. Like I'm not smart enough. There's no way. There's so many people that are smarter than me. There's so many people that are more athletic than me and gifted than me and all of these other things. And I would tell young me like, hey, don't worry so much. Just stick to the process, do the things that you need to do, list it out, and give it 100%. Which I always did. I was never the strongest, fastest, smartest, in the class, number one at really anything growing up. But I was persistent, and I hustled, right? Even in sports, I liked to hustle, and I liked people that hustle as well. So like
Yeah.
the rock, think of like the Rocky movies or Rudy, right? That old football movie about the guy, playing football on the team that probably shouldn't have been there, but he just had the heart and the hustle. And and to me, that speaks a lot. And when people see that when the people that can get you where you want to be, say your mentors or even instructors, weapon school, I failed a ton of rides. That's part of weapon school. You fail until you succeed. Um, and you need to have that, right? It's not a straight line coast to get to your goal. There's going to be bumps, and you're going to get bruises along the way, but that's part of it. That's part of the growth, and that's part of achieving the objective of where you want to be. So don't
Definitely.
give up. I tell myself, don't worry so much, and just trust the process.
I like it. All right. Well, we're near an hour now, and I know that you got a busy day ahead of some cool stuff. So let's get into the shameless plug. So you got that 1, 2 minutes just to have a bit of a, just anything you want people to take a look at. So if
Mm.
someone's here listening in now who's got this far through the podcast, where should they go next? Whether that's a piece of reading material or a bit of recruitment
Mhm.
or just something that's a good cause. Yeah. Anything there that you'd like to share around, and social media, definitely add that in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd encourage you. First of all, thanks for watching. Hopefully some good information for you. You can always the Air Force website, United States Air Force website, has a ton of good information on the recruiting of the types of jobs that are available in the Air Force. So come check that out. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all the standard social media to see how we're progressing through the season. If you're specifically a fan of the Thunderbirds. One thing I'd really recommend you to take a look at is our documentary on May 23rd. That drops, yeah, May 23rd, so just in about a month. And that's on Netflix. And I encourage you to watch that because it gives you a bit more insight. It gets us in plain clothes talking about the struggles through training season and really the behind the scenes look of what it takes to put this team together, put this demonstration together, and all the people that make this happen. And then, yeah, find that mentor, find somebody that is doing the job that you want to do, and start a conversation with them, and see if this is something that you want to do. So again, do your research, find somebody to help you along the way, and yeah, stay encouraged and start doing the things you got to do to make it a reality.
I like it. Some great advice. And yeah, all I can say is just a massive thank you. This has been a great episode, and what an amazing guest to have him for 150. I'm so stoked about it, and I can't wait to share it around to people. So thank you for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast, and can't wait to shake your hand in the future too.
Same here. I look forward to it. And thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Had a great time chatting with you.
No problem at all. And thank you guys for listening. This was episode 150. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit the subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. See you in the next one. Good night.